Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for List Week 2017, which is personally one of my favorite times of the year when I get to give a final ultimatum on what I think my best albums and EPs of the year are. List Week has kind of evolved over the years on the Landon Remixes channel. Back in 2014, I did my very first, which was my top 10 albums of 2014. The following year, I did a top 10 albums, and I think it was top 8 EPs of 2015. And then last year I did, I think, a top 10 EPs, top 10 albums, and a top 10 worst albums and EPs video. This year I'll be replacing the top 10 worst video with a top, some undecided amount as of now, Monstercat releases of 2017, because I know Monstercat's been a really popular topic on my channel, especially in this year. But regardless, I'm still as excited as ever to do List Week, and we'll be kicking it off with my top 10 EPs of 2017. I will say, when it comes to EPs in 2017, the competition definitely is not tough as it was last year. I think a big part of that is that Eden didn't release an EP this year, which typically in years past he has released 1 or even 2 EPs. And he consistently tops my list, so the fact that he didn't this year made competition a little bit more slim than I'd say it typically is. No matter, I did do full reviews of over 30 EPs this year, so I definitely say the top 10 out of those are definitely honorable and still very enjoyable. As always, to qualify for this list, the EP both had to be released between December 2016 and November 2017, and also had to be reviewed by me at some point this year, whether that be in a rapid fire review or a full review. This year though, it just so happens to be that there are no rapid fire review EPs on this list, so all of these that I'm featuring in this video you'll be able to go back and find full reviews of if you want to see me talk a little bit more about them in depth. Before I get into my number 10, I would also like to mention that you guys should definitely take this ordering as a grain of salt, because roughly numbers 4 through 10 I really liked all about the same. So just understand that this ordering doesn't have a ton of weight to it, but regardless, these are my 10 favorite EPs of 2017. Let's get right into it.
Big Red Mariachi!
Okay, I may have overrated this EP a little bit in my initial review, but regardless, I still think it's a really solid collection of work, and I really like what Dodge and Fuski did on a lot of this. After years and years of Rob just putting out the most generic electronic dance music under the Dodge and Fuski moniker, it is really refreshing to see Chris Allen, aka Fuski, returning to bring some of that Dodge and Fuski classic flavor back on this EP. For that reason, the track Comeback I just absolutely adore. And then there's a Big Rhythm Mariachi, arguably the wackiest of the Big Rhythm trio. And then on this EP, there's also some hidden symbolism in regards to the war on bro step versus rhythm. I really feel like with this EP, Dodge and Fuski were trying to say, who cares if it's dubstep, who cares if it's rhythm, stop it with the genre wars and just enjoy the music. And they absolutely got the point across with this EP, coming across with lyricism from Virus Syndicate, trying to kind of push across that message. And I don't know, I just feel like production-wise, this was a really solid EP. It definitely lives up to its name. It's straight, it's to the point, and it's all killer, no filler. Is one of the artists on the Monstercat roster that I never really felt like I could get too into, with the exception of a couple tracks, i.e. Blurred Vision and The Place I Once Knew, and I never really felt like I could get super immersed into the PYLOT journal entries that kind of went along with each track release. This EP, I feel like, definitely changed that. I'm definitely more interested in the PYLOT narrative than I used to be, with each of these tracks kind of musically describing the personality traits and the roles of each of the members of the Shadowtask team, and the EP concludes with this absolutely epic, like, superhero themed title track, Shadowtask. And I'm not really sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing that this track is so fantastic that it just absolutely blows everything else on the EP away, but regardless, I think most of this EP, the way through, even if I did have some problems with it, makes up for some of the best synthwave I've heard in the last couple years. I guess since PYLOT has been so great at kind of pulling these concepts together, I'd be really curious to see what PYLOT could do with a full-length album, although who knows if we'll ever see that happen. I hope it does.
I know that
right here is an EP release that I never really expected to see on Monstercat. Duumu is an artist that I've been following for the last couple years thanks to his productions for Lone Moon. Duumu, at least to me, isn't an artist whose sound like totally screams out Monstercat, so I never really saw this coming, and I can say I was definitely pleasantly surprised with the result. This EP generally has a really toned back acoustic style to it, and is something that just sounds a lot more natural, a lot more raw and organic than really anything we've ever seen Monstercat push before, which is really, really cool. Although Duumu also combined that with a bit of an EDM sound throughout the EP, which I think ended up working out really nicely in his favor. It's just a really different approach to electronic music, and I love it for that. If you watch my review of this EP, you'll know that as solo artists, I really was not crazy about Stephen Walking or 7 Minutes Dead, but when they combined together for this project, I think they put together something really magical. In terms of the engineering, I think this whole EP has a really retro sound to it. It almost sounds like you're listening through it on like a vinyl playback, but it also uses a lot of production techniques that I feel like are really modern, especially in terms of its vocal chops, which gives it some great balance between those two kind of sounds. And I mean, I personally had picks with this EP, especially noting how short it was in my review. And while its shortness does tend to affect how much I can enjoy this EP, in terms of its cohesiveness and its storytelling, I still think Orbiter did an absolutely fantastic job in terms of the production, and that's probably where all the points go. I would recommend really any dedicated fan of electronic music to check out this EP, although I would definitely suggest it to fans of French electro, synthwave, and maybe even a little bit of future bass, and if you like seeing those styles kind of mesh together in a really interesting way, I would definitely say check out this EP. Crywolf is an artist who time and time again has continually shown me his widespread abilities as an artist, although his falsetto vocals, in my opinion, begin to feel very whiny and tiring on projects like Cataclysm. This EP, in my mind, fixed a lot of the problems that I thought Cataclysm had. There's a lot better balance of the vocal work. Crywolf does a great job of showcasing his abilities as an EDM producer on top of being an instrumentalist and a vocalist. I also feel like this EP did a much better job kind of carrying its ups and downs throughout the project, whereas on Cataclysm we didn't really see that as much, with a very flat sound throughout. This EP, of course, it's not perfect, but to me it's still really good and definitely one of the better cuts we've seen out of the indie-tronica scene this year.
It's who I am.
I am so proud of Notaker moving into more story-driven music, and I think this EP was a great place to start. The whole theme of this EP with the vessel is something I personally feel like I can connect with, especially because a lot of Dave's influences on this EP, like Interstellar, A Space Odyssey, Star Wars, are things that date back to my childhood. I loved sci-fi growing up. Dave really brings out this kind of mysterious, spacey feel on this EP, and if you haven't checked out my review that I did with him on this EP, you definitely should, because Dave does an excellent job kind of explaining this story's narrative. And it's like, I didn't think every song in this EP was absolutely fantastic, but at least every song is distinctly Notaker. Like, he doesn't really sound like anyone else across the board here. Except maybe Eric Prydz on So Much Love and Maddie on Just Close Your Eyes, but really every other spot on this EP, Notaker is just being himself, and it's fantastic.
Life is wrapped up in plastics, fucking fantastic.
With Flume, I thought the Skin album was really good. It did end up making my top 10 albums of 2016, but when Flume dropped the first companion EP, I remembered being severely underwhelmed, largely because I felt like so many songs on that EP felt super parallel to songs on that album, and I didn't really feel like it was being expanded upon at all. And I feel like this second companion EP really pushed that kind of attitude I was hoping to get with companion EP. This EP is definitely a lot darker, it's a lot less pretty gritty than the first Skin Companion EP. It's a lot more gritty, a little bit more distorted. You've got a feature from Pusha T, you've got a feature from Dave Glass Animals, and in general, I'd probably say this EP had a little bit more of an edgy sound to it than the regular Skin album, but honestly, I enjoy that sound quite a bit, the kind of really hard-hitting trap influence beats of this EP. I will say I was a little disappointed that Hyperreal ended up being a vinyl exclusive and came a bit after this EP's release, because I think that track is honestly pretty fantastic, and I would have liked to talk about it in my review, but sadly not a possibility. Even though this is supposed to be a companion to the Skin album, I definitely think it makes its own way as a solid body of work as an EP.
So chameleon, and I liked you better before I know you. I liked you. You're so chameleon, and I liked you better before I knew you.
Moving into the big three, I'm starting off with an EP that I surprisingly really liked. I've mentioned before about how I've really enjoyed Grey as a duo when it comes to their remixes, but in terms of their originals, Candyman, Starving, I found the results to be just a little bit too cheesy, pop-leaning, and honestly underwhelming. And given the lead single off this project, Crime, I kind of expected this EP to turn out the same way, but Grey blew my mind. Well, not entirely, because Crime is still very much a part of this EP, but on every other track, Grey really did a great job. The duo did some really solid work blending in their brand of future bass as well as breaks, with elements of rock as well. They also had some really great features lined up for this EP as well. I'd probably say the most impactful one came from Steven, who also had a spot in my top 10 albums of 2016. Although you've got some pretty noteworthy names like Avril Lavigne and Anthony Green on here as well. It's also worth noting that this EP is extremely well-rounded. Grey doesn't really overuse a single style of music across this EP. It's really diverse. I don't know, I personally think this is their most enjoyable work to date, but maybe that's just me. I think I may have undercredited this EP a little bit when it came out. I mean, to be fair, I do think DROELOE set the bar really high with their Monstercat releases. I do not think Bon Voyage can be topped, and I really like Jump as well. Looking back on it, really just about every moment on this EP feels really inventive, and it feels really refreshing. And that's not to say that this EP is perfect. I mean, there are things that I would personally change about it. But even on the moments in this EP where it feels like DROELOE is going for a little bit more of a mainstream appeal, a little bit more of a commercial sound, they definitely make up for it with their really unique sound design. Even looking back on my least favorite track on the EP, Lily Pads, I think that song even has some spots that feel really special and unique. Like I said, I might have dug into this EP a little too deep initially. It's a really good EP, and in fact, it's damn near perfect. And what could possibly follow that EP? Well... Tennyson EP is just so good on every level. I am so glad my first time getting to experience Tennyson was in a live setting back when I saw them in February, because I really feel like when you get to see that side of things, you get so much more of an appreciation for every little detail and aspect that goes into a project like this Uh-Oh EP. My main worry going into this EP is that Tennyson was going to be going for a much more commercial sound, and while there are commercial elements of this EP, notably when it comes to Crybird and the Aloe Black feature on Body Language, the duo has definitely not abandoned that uniqueness that made them so special in the first place. It's still got that really bright, youthful sound to it, but it also uses a lot of wacky elements as well, and then manages to kind of switch things up and do a number of different styles, not limited to, you know, future bass. Although if you are into really classy, high-quality future bass music, I definitely say Tennyson is absolutely top of the line. And yeah, that's really all I've got to say about that. Uh-Oh, probably my favorite EP of the year by a long shot. It's the only EP I gave a 9 this year, and I think the next closest was a 7.5, so definitely check out this EP. It's easily up there as one of my favorites of the year, including albums too, I might add. But we'll get to that later this week. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 EPs of 2017 video. I almost said 2016, but that simply would not be true. Let me know what your guys' favorite EP is down in the comment section below. And if you want to check out any of my reviews for the EPs listed in this video, you can find them down in the description attached to the name of the EP, as well as the Spotify links if you want to stream them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will see you real soon for my favorite Monstercat releases of 2017, and I'll catch you guys then. Peace.